Okay, just to let you know that we are recording. Okay, my name's Paul Whiteman, and thanks for taking your time out of, it could be a lunch break for a lot of people on the East Coast. Today, we're going to be presenting a webinar on understanding the power of Costpoint's manufacturing, procurement, and quality capabilities. Just a little bit of housekeeping, first of all, just due to the large number of attendees that we've got, and we'll probably have a few more joining as well. We just want everyone to stay on mute, just so the line's kind of clear. This is a 60-minute presentation, and we will leave some time at the end for some Q&A. We would prefer the Q&A. If you have questions, you can put them in the Teams chat, either during the presentation or at the end. And just to let you know, following the webinar, all attendees, we will send an email with a copy of the presentation and a link to the webinar recording. So if there's folks that that couldn't join, you will be able to share the recording and the presentation. So okay, let's get going. So we have a great presentation team today. So myself, I'm a partner of Lexell Blue Consulting, and I lead our materials management and procurement practice. We also have Jonathan Davis from Deltek and Dave DeRosiers, and I'll let them do a quick intro when they get to their sections. From the agenda today, we're going to talk about digital maturity in the aerospace and defense and government contract market. We're going to do an overview of the available functionality in the Costpoint manufacturing and procurement area. We're also going to highlight some of the key enhancements that have been released in 8.2, and a lot of you, if you're on the Deltek clouds, a lot of you are on 8.2 by now, and I think a large chunk went live yesterday, I believe. So pretty good timing. And then Jonathan from Deltek is going to do a demonstration of the TIP quality and shop floor execution functionality and how that integrates with the Costpoint solution, and then Q&A at the end. Okay, so moving on to manufacturing digital maturity in the aerospace and defense and GovCon market space. So what are the drivers for organizations needing to increase their digital maturity? Quite often in GovCon and aerospace and defense, there'll be organizations that start out as primarily an R&D shop with a lot of engineering. And then they may get a contract moving into a low rate initial production before they move into full rate production. So quite often those organizations need to mature from an engineering environment into a full manufacturing environment. There may also be kind of rapid growth in a lot of our clients that we see, whether that's with new and large contract awards. But there's also a lot of acquisition activity where, primarily an engineering company or even a services company buys into, full manufacturing area with acquisition, and they need to really get up to speed with that maturity on managing those manufacturing processes. Quite often there's going to be contractual requirements driving the need for digital maturity, quality, compliance, driven at the contract level. And one of the areas, with a lot of competition in the GovCon marketplace, there's competition to drive cost reductions and therefore, be as efficient as possible as well. So some of the benefits for organizations increasing their manufacturing maturity, increasing workforce efficiency, so doing more with the same resources, minimizing the risk of late customer deliveries and shortages, which can really mess up production and delivering to your customers. Improved data accuracy, so moving data capture from paper into electronic data capture improves data accuracy. And then all that leads into improving compliance. So whether that's MMAS, materials management accounting systems, CPSR, government property tracking if you're tracking materials in the Costpoint system, and then really importantly from a end product level product traceability and quality requirements as well. So I put this chart up just to show how we see organizations kind of maturing on the left-hand side. As the organizations mature up their chain, there is capability within the Costpoint and TIP solutions that help all the way along that kind of that maturity flow. So you may see organizations, like I mentioned, starting off as services or R&D and really just using materials from a procurement standpoint, and inventory management and potentially sales orders. But as you grow up the maturity chain, that may lead into managing, doing more reporting through business intelligence, using a PLM system, using bills of materials in Costpoint, and then also using the basic production and WIP control. And then as you step up again, there may be another advanced level. So moving into master production scheduling. Do you need rough cut capacity planning, using the MRP engine in Costpoint, using routings and putting controls around master data with ECN controls, and maybe there's a need to improve efficiencies with inventory barcoding as well. As you get more advanced, then there's a need for manufacturing execution systems. So taking the tracking of the data off the shop floor from paper into an electronic system. Same too with a quality management system. Having a purpose-built quality management system in your environment. There may be a need to increase the accuracy of your labor capture. So there's shop floor labor collection options in the Costpoint solution. All of the Costpoint planning capability up to that point is really an infinite capacity. So as you move into a larger operation where you really need to have a finite capacity planning tool, there's a Deltek partner that can provide that advanced planning and scheduling capability. And then as you move on, there may be automating those solutions and integrating your platforms between Costpoint, whatever PLM system you're using, whatever MES and QMS system that you're using, whether it's TIP, but also other systems that can integrate with Costpoint as well, and also using automation with extensibility options in Costpoint as well. Obviously, this isn't the only path. Depending on your priorities and your business needs, you can have a different path, but this is just kind of an example of what we typically see. Okay, moving into the Costpoint and capabilities. We're going to put this chart up. We're also going to have this later when Jonathan's talking about the TIPQA functionality. But really, if we think of Deltek, Costpoint, and TIP as the overall solution, it really covers the whole product life cycle from bidding and proposal with the materials estimating module. As you move into configuration management and engineering, we have the product definition, bills of materials, routings, and then that engineering control around it. From a production planning standpoint, the master production scheduling can give you that rough cut capacity planning and also some materials forecasting, and also the MRP system. It flows into the supply chain, so procurement planning, purchasing, and receiving. And then also, once you've received in your inventory management, moving into production control where you're managing your work orders, or in Costpoint, it's their manufacturing orders, including that shop floor time collection as well. And there's also capability. It starts the process, the sales order process, taking in new customer orders, and that really drives the whole MRP process. And then that comes in at the end of the process for shipping out materials and invoicing your customer if the contract makes sense for it, whether it's a fixed price invoice. And then Jonathan will talk about the quality capability as well. Just kind of highlighting really some of the key Costpoint capabilities in terms of what's in the Costpoint Materials modules. I kind of broke out MRP. It's really a sophisticated project-based MRP tool. We can take in dependent demand and independent demand, whether it's from a sales order, a forecast, a reservation, or safety stock levels, and drive out the requirements that are needed, balancing the supply and demand. We do that with a lot of flexibility in terms of project planning. So depending on the contract, do we need to do planning at the top level, the charge level? We can combine projects into multiple netting groups, and then also kind of do we include common stock as part of that as well? And then once you've automated your supply with the MRP, which is very efficient to create all your requisitions and manufacturing orders that you need, it's a very good tool for also managing where you are to date and updating the supply based on changes, whether it's engineering changes or it could be changes to your demand, where maybe the customer pushed out dates. And it's also has the ability to do substitute part planning as well. Another strength of Costpoint, I'd say, is it's fully integrated to the Costpoint project financials, and Costpoint probably the system leader from a project financial standpoint, and having that fully integrated with your inventory and manufacturing order process is highly recommended. So we support project-based inventory cost accounting. We keep track of all the labor, the materials, outside processing cost, and apply all the indirect burden rates as well, all the way up the chain, so you get a fully costed product at the end. I'll say also it's a robust supply chain capability. So definitely seen a lot of investments from Deltek over the last few years, both on the manufacturing side, but also in procurement. Supports flexible PR to PO assignments, so you can do it at the line level, driving from PR to PO. There's been a lot of improvements in the Costpoint supplier portal. So having suppliers update vendor info, acknowledging POs, they can respond to RFQs through the supplier portal, and then doing shipping authorizations, and then even invoicing through the supplier portal as well. Allows all that just electronic communication. Plus, a lot of clients don't realize that the subcontract module in Costpoint, which is in the contracts area, can track the order or the vendor's contract flow downs and have those print on the POs directly as well. And Costpoint's a very integration and extension friendly system. So yeah, we have a lot of automated integrations with our clients between the PLM systems and MES and QMS if you're not using the TIPQA solutions. And we're seeing a lot of clients also using extensibility to automate their processes, streamline their processes, but also capture any additional data where a field's not available in Costpoint, from a compliance standpoint. Okay, that's kind of a high level of the Costpoint capabilities, and I'm going to pass it over to Dave to talk through the 8.2 enhancements as well.
Thanks, Paul. My name is Dave DeRogers. I'm with Lexell Blue. Been working in manufacturing and supply chain for 32-ish years. So, and I kind of love this kind of stuff. So this is really interesting. Some of the enhancements and user experience improvements that have happened in 8.2. So the first one here is the printing from the managed screens. Typically, you'd have to go into like the purchase order, create the purchase order, have update your managed purchase order, and then you can go into the print purchase order. Or the same with the manufacturing. All the modules that you see listed or applications you see listed, you'd have to go into a print screen. Now you can print right from the manage screen for each of those applications, adding some efficiencies to the process. The next slide, please. Now you would also see some hyperlinks in the system where you can see requisition IDs. Specifically, if you're in like the rec approval screen or an inventory, the view inventory screen, you can see the requirements might have a document number, which before you'd have to copy that, go into the other application and query up the document. Now you can just click on the hyperlink and it will bring you to the view screens for those documents. Next slide, please. Okay, the improvements to the PO NAICS and business size. So you added a, well, typically the NAICS code pulls from the vendor profile and the business size is assigned with that. If the NAICS code is not populated in your vendor profile, the business size will pull from the vendor classification, and it's then, excuse me, then it has the ability to, like, you'll see it pull up and it'll have the size standard associated with it. And then in the next slide, you can actually set it up to print with that information as well. So once you have your NAICS codes assigned to your vendor profiles or the vendor classifications, you would see, and you set your print options to include that, you would see that pull over based on the business size with the numbers. I don't, you have it highlighted in the screen. You also have some the other print updates. The print PO updates is to have the period of performance at the line level print. It used to just be what the header level was. Have the options to exclude certain statuses of POs. I know a lot of those. Sometimes you add lines to purchase orders and like void them and move the funding to other orders, and then you have a bunch of voided lines that you may not want to send out to your suppliers. Well, you have the option to remove those. And I mean, I don't want to go through every single bullet point, but you'll see all of this additional functionality in 8.2. Go ahead, please. In your configure purchase requisition setting screen, you have this new checkbox to use delivery schedules. And when you put the number of days within that delivery schedule field, when you're releasing or firming up action messages from MRP, if the project are the same and you're releasing multiple lines for that, just happen to be different dates, it will create it onto one requisition line and automatically create the delivery schedule beneath that. So rather than adding 5-10 lines to a requisition, it creates one line with the delivery schedule, which will then feed to your purchase order the same way. Next slide, please. This is probably my favorite feature, spending the amount of time I spent in supply chain management. There's the new setting screen to force. You can select which of these updates on a purchase order would force a change order. There's been times where buyers can go in and change this and change that without a change order. Now in the setting screen, if you select any of those checkbox options that you see there, I'm not going to read them all off, but if you try to do a change in the purchase order and one of those are checked, it's going to give you an error message saying that a change order is required for this, which I think is great, because then you can ensure that your purchase order matches the supplier's purchase order and there's nothing's happened that didn't get communicated. Next slide, please. This is an enhancement that allows you to have visibility to the ship IDs. When you're selecting ship IDs in requisitions or in the purchase orders, it used to only show you up until that source code field. so you can see the name of it, but it didn't give you the address information, the city and state. So you weren't 100% certain that you were selecting the right one. This gives you all of the address information, so you can make sure you're selecting the correct ship ID. Next slide, please. So, those of you that were at the last ProjectCon, this was discussed, and it's actually pretty interesting functionality that came out. Is you can now plan and release parts, make or buy, or plan for pre-release parts, so make or buy. So you can, before it would only, MRP would only drive your released parts, and you have to wait for those other parts to get approved and released for MRP to pick it up and plan it. Now you can actually release or firm up your action messages in MRP for these items. You can place the purchase orders or cut the manufacturing orders, process them, get them in, receive them, or even with the MO, you can get to the last step. You just can't put them into inventory until the status changes to released. So you would probably call this like at risk kind of thing. You're taking the process as far as you can, getting ahead of the game, getting the parts ordered and received and inspected, and then once it's released, you can put it into inventory and continue on. You have to have the setting that's you can see highlighted in the settings screen checked to allow for that. The next slide, please. So serialized backflush and MO reject functions are additions in A2. So you can allow the serial lot backflush, which you can see on the slide. Is going to take the FIFO, the first expired, first out. So if you have it set at backflush, and depending where you do that, and the parts are flagged as backflush parts, it's going to look at the serial or lot in your inventory that is closest to expiration and pull that, and then it will go first in, first out with the oldest timestamp of the shelf life item. And the allow rejections at MO relief, some new functions where you can do a rejection as if you have that final inspection on your in process assembly, and you have parts that fall out, any quantity, you're building 5 and you have one that's getting rejected. You can do the rejection at the MO relief step, and you can, if you can see in the screenshot at the bottom, on the bottom right, you have to put in your an acceptance location and your rejection location. But when you finish and save the relief it will move the rejected quantity into the rejected location. If you can see that. So you're still going to get an error if you don't put the acceptance location. But once you do that, you'll see that your transaction will automatically move the quantity that's been rejected to that rejected location. Next slide, please. This is I think a very long awaited enhancement, I believe. And so you can see in this slide, it's when you do your inventory, looking at the inventory transaction history. Now they've added the on-hand balance from and on-hand balance to, so you can see the impact that each transaction has made to your inventory at the time of the transaction. So what this kind of lends to in the future is being able to run a stock status for a period in time. With new projects, you'd be able to do that. It would be difficult to do, or almost impossible to do with the old ones, but once because you don't have that time, that entry for those new fields. But I mean, that's something that's been asked for years, as far as I can remember. But I was really interested to see that be added. And the print stock status summary report, it just will print the summary as you see there, so you don't get 900 pages. You don't have to look through and click to the last page to see the totals. You'll run the summary report and see by project for the warehouse that you select what the total on-hand amount is. So this is probably the best view you can use in your month-end and year-end processes to get those the totals for you to do your reconciliations. Next slide. All right, Paul, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Some good improvements. Like you said, some that we've been waiting for a while, but all good. Better late than never, right? Okay, so one of the I think a really good new piece of functionality that's come up with 8.2 is the customer returns capability, so RMA capability. And it's really a whole kind of business process. Prior to this enhancement, for any organization that was really having to manage customer returns, there was a solution, but it was kind of like a little bit of a workaround where you could represent a return from a customer using like a GFM purchase order, and then we could create a manufacturing order to do the repair, and then a sales order to ship that repaired out item back out to the customer. And we came up with some creative ways to kind of link all those transactions together. Usually it was with the same transaction ID as like an RMA number. So it was doable, but this is definitely going to improve that whole process. So from a process flow standpoint, when you hear from the customer that there's some kind of non-conformance and they're sending material back or they're scrapping it, basically the users will enter a customer return. So it's basically a new screen in Costpoint, and I'm going to show you this in Costpoint soon, and not just the slides, but just walking through the process. Once you enter the customer return and you generate an RMA number, the next step is if they're going to be sending those materials back to your facility, those can be received in through it's an RMA type purchase order. You can only see in the receiving screen, so that you can actually, through the manage PO receipts and also the QC inspection screen if needed, you can receive in those returned items from the customer. And then obviously there's going to be some analysis on what's going to happen with the materials depending on that disposition. If you're just going to replace the materials, you can generate a sales order and link it to the RMA, or a refund that can all be linked back to the RMA. But if there's and also for a replacement, if you can just issue out and the material, if you have it on hand already, and send that out to the customer. But then if there's a repair needed, then what we can do is we would create either if it's a vendor provided repair, you can create a purchase order and link that to the RMA, and then do your kind of issued a PO transaction to move your returned item to that PO, and that would all be linked to the RMA. If it's an internal repair and you're doing it with your internal resources, then you would create a customer repair manufacturing order, and that would also be linked to the RMA. So it's really creates great visibility in anyone needing to know what the status is of that RMA anywhere in the process. These are the new screens that there are. There's a setting screen, there's a customer return reason screen, there's a customer return screen. There's also a really good status inquiry for customer returns that have been added as well. We did put this link here. It's a really good how-to that's on deltek.com. A really good, I think it's about 10 or 12 minutes on a how-to going through all the transaction screens. And then also from the receiving and then the manufacturing orders and then the sales orders. And I'll just kind of jump into Costpoint to kind of show you this. And I didn't know I would have logged out by now, but anyway. So yeah, I'll just pull up I've just got a banner here for RMA. So pulling up the customer returns here. So this is the new customer return screen. So you reference the customer. It's an option to do it against an original sales order. You don't have to, but that would default a lot of the information in. There's customer contact information, so you can actually put in an email address, and that would notify that customer contact with the RMA details. Down at the line level, we keep track of what is being returned, what's the quantity, what's happening with the order payment. For this one, it's going to be a repair, and we're doing a repair internal. When you check this box here, material return required, what that means is you're going to expect that the PO receipt is going to be entered when you actually get the materials returned back. And then the nice thing is, like I mentioned, we keep track of all of the associated transactions. So because this was a repair internal, there was a customer repair manufacturing order that was created, and then you have visibility into that. And here's an example of those hot links that Dave talked about as well. So we can pull up this manufacturing order and kind of see this was a customer repair manufacturing order. I'll even go into the screen here. And you can see this customer repair MO is linked to the RMA number and the RMA line number. So that's how that whole linking works. And then you would use this just as a normal customer repair manufacturing order. You would issue the part that was returned along with any other components that are needed to support that repair, and keeps track of all the costs associated with that as well. And then downstream, as we go to the sales order, this is where we can, when you ship out that the repaired item back to the customer, again, it's all being linked to the specific RMA number and the RMA line number. And then the other feature that I wanted to show you is at that receiving stage. So on the original receipt of the returned item, this is representing, we're receiving it against this RMA PO, and it's a specific RMA PO type, so you can only see it in this receiving screen. But this is a great method for keeping track of that return and actually increasing your inventory to keep track of that returned item. So really good functionality, visibility, that whole RMA process. While I was in here, for some folks that are new to Costpoint or haven't seen Costpoint, just wanted to show all of that capability. It's fully integrated with all the project financials, so accounting and projects, contracts management. It's all integrated, projects. And this is where you find all of your materials management capability from, engineering, parts, bombs, routings, all the way through the supply chain, tracking your inventory on hand, all the way through production control, sales order entry, and the production planning that we talked about as well. And another nice feature is the fact that there's pretty good capability now in the supplier portal to manage, vendors, quotes, communicating with the vendors on POs, shipping information, and the ability to do vendor invoices as well through the portal. So I just wanted to point out, I know I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan soon. There is, so a lot of clients don't realize that there's a whole slew of reports and dashboards for materials and manufacturing and supply chain in the Costpoint BI area. So for 8.2, there was some just showing some examples of reports that were added. This is a BOM component shortage report. So it's an indented BOM view and shows your, your inventory availability. There's an inventory dashboard. Because of the new module, there's a new customer return report. There's material labels that can be printed out as well. And so if you haven't accessed them, definitely ask your system administrator to get access, but you'll see them within Costpoint in the business intelligence area, and there's also kind of a dashboards area as well. So definitely make use of those existing reports and take a look at the new Costpoint 8.2 reports as well. I'm not going to go through, there are a lot of other enhancements, but we won't go through all of these, but we just thought we'd document them here for your reference. And if you have any questions later or send us an email, we can address it. Okay, so Jonathan, I'm going to hand it over to you, sir.
Sounds perfect. Thanks, Paul. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jonathan Davis. I do work at Deltek, and really I serve in what we call our solutions engineering group. So it's generally, I probably actually had interactions with some of the folks on the phone, but talk about requirements, demonstrate the software, and I'm going to be talking to you from the specific view of TIPQA and TIPSFE. So I think Paul actually showed earlier, if you jump to the next slide, Paul, he showed this slide here. That really just speaks to how cost point functionality and tip functionality can intertwine and work together. So if we think about, what's highlighted here, really that overview that Paul just did in cost point spoke to all the different gray boxes, right? Different functionality that's there, the MPS function, the MRP, your procurement planning, et cetera. And then these are just a few of the TIPQA modules and TIPSFE modules that really speak directly to that functionality that you'll see here. So that's actually what I'm going to walk through, but you can see how it walks right in line with those different pieces. So if we think about supply chain, managing all that purchasing activity in cost point, you're going to have some enhanced supplier quality functionality, some supplier ratings that get that information from cost point and work together. Same thing is going to happen when we think about manufacturing and that process, right? Creating our overall MO, having our operations be there, but now getting into those detailed shop floor work instructions, the ability to tie different tools and sign-offs and have that send that information back over to cost point. So we wanted to just, again, remind you of how these functions work together. And then if we jump to the next slide, Paul, this is where the data is really speaking together bidirectionally, right? So when we think about things that start in cost point, today, if you're using that, you have your purchase orders, you have your vendor records, that stuff all starts off in cost point. And then as we now send that vendor master down the tip, I'll show you some enhanced functionality that you have around controlling the vendor from a more quality aspect of how you want to operate. In addition, you'll think about your parts and your bombs. Cost point is a system of record for those, but there are additional controls down at the tip level when we think about the item master as well. And then just like I talked about, we have those manufacturing orders. So that detail gets sent down. And then all the different things that we'll process on the tip side, be it those receiving inspections, potentially, be it those MO completions in the operation, that detail is going to come back over into cost point. And you decide how often you want these two systems to talk together, right? Is that going to be every 10 minutes or so type thing? Is it going to be once an hour? But these systems are working based on, the already pre-built integration that will come out of the box as you start to deploy a tip solution. So I'm actually going to take the control from Paul here, and I'm going to start sharing my screen. And I'm going to start off in the TIPQA solution, right? So as I log in right now, what I'm looking at is the home screen. So typically, if we think about different people who are going to be accessing TIP, Those are going to be your quality engineers, your manufacturing engineers, your inspectors, your technicians, right? Different people. So everybody who logs in is simply going to be doing different pieces of functions, right? So as I'm here, it shows me actually, when I log in, I am Chad Hunter. So it's going to show me what my login ID is. And this actually gives me a running list of, hey, what's currently assigned to me? So I can see what work orders are assigned to me. I can see what non-conformance records are assigned to me. And these all have these little hyperlinks where I can click and go directly to those particular functions. So as I move across this, right, I can see all the different things. Okay, there's a manufacturing plan that I need to go ahead and take a look at, maybe edit or approve. All that detail is going to be here and it's going to show. And then down at the very bottom of this, I'll get a total of everything, right? How behind am I, right? What do I need to focus on? What's really in my queue? So that'll present, and that's going to, again, right size to each operator who's signing in here. But then the first thing that I wanted to speak to when we're here is one of those initial touch points from Costpoint. So for those who are using Costpoint today, you create that purchase order. The purchase order has been delivered to the vendor. And then now as the vendor starts to deliver product, I'm sure some of you already use like the QC inspection function in Costpoint. This is going to give you additional control for those operators, or I should say for those inspectors, to say, hey, instead of them going out to a secondary system and saying, let me pull up the drawing, let me pull up some detail, we can actually do that more detailed receiving inspection right here. So in TIP, I'm able to manage my favorites just like I can in Costpoint. So I'm going to go over to the actual receiving inspection. Now, TIP is going to be very much query-based, just like Costpoint is, where I can come in and I can see, hey, I want to just see what parts are currently awaiting inspection, what parts have already started the inspection, etc. And then also I can come down and build my own queries, right? So if I wanted to just query a specific receiver number, I can come in, barcode, and scan that in. I can scan the barcode, excuse me, to go ahead and say, oh, yes, this is the particular inspection that I want to do. And as I do that, I'm actually going to click on one of these inspections that's here. So we're going to inspect this 50-gallon loaf. And as you see, a lot of the detail has come over from Costpoint, right? So when I'm looking at this, I can see again what that part number is going to be, but I can see my supplier, and that's going to be, again, be a Costpoint supplier. So I'm seeing their supplier name. Here's the actual supplier ID from Costpoint. And then I get into the details like what's the PO number, what was the actual receiver number, and all that type of detail, right? So I'm coming in, I'm grabbing a lot of that detail from Costpoint. Over to the left or to the right, excuse me, I've got my project, all the stuff that's already innate in that Costpoint receiver record, but it'll come now over into TIP. So from here, I'm actually going to click on the criteria here. And within that criteria, this is where we get into that more detailed, hey, lay out exactly what I want from that inspector, right? Hey, Mr. Inspector, you see we've got actually different pieces of the criteria code that go down through here. So they're able to see one, here's an actual access to the drawing. This is the particular thing that you're going to measure, right? Where I can call out and say, hey, measure the width of this using those calipers, record that caliper on the asset tab. And we'll talk about some tool and gauge management as well. I actually focus more on that within the manufacturing order. But all that is going to be identified here. And then now you can call out, hey, what those measurements were. So as I roll back up here a little bit, I'll see the different variations and the different measurements that we're asking for. Hey, give me the width of the tank, for example. And I can see within that width of the tank, I can see what my minimum should be. I can see what my maximum is. And then I can see what my actual measurement was. So this one is within spec. As you see, it's highlighted in green. It's a pass. So I can go ahead and give that pass quantity as the 1. I've got some other ones which can they don't have to be numerical values. I can just do a pass fail, which you'll see here. And then at the bottom of this, you'll additionally see the ability to go ahead and track, hey, these parts are actually out of spec, right? So this needed to be within that range. It's under, they're both under. I can go ahead and measure those and I can generate my non-conformances right here at this point and track those through to this position. So this information, as we do it here, as we save these records, these results are sent back up to Costpoint. So it will mimic that QC inspection transaction that takes place there today. So the receiving inspection is going to give you that more detailed look. Hey, provide the drawings, provide pictures necessarily, or if you want that inspector to go ahead and give you a picture of what they went ahead and inspected, we can associate all that here. And this is going to actually speed up, or this is going to tie to the end of the process. Whereas you think about that documentation you provide your customer, we're able to take the details of this actual receipt and this inspection record and put that into our data package that will ultimately deliver to our customers to show that, hey, everything we received was inspected. These are the actual tools that we use to measure that. And then this is that top level part that this commodity or that this component eventually rolled up into. In addition, not just looking at that receipt inspection, you're going to have controls at the supplier master level, right? So when I think about the vendor record, is going to start off in Costpoint, but now as we get into TIP, there are a bunch of other details that you're able to capture around that. So if I come just to my general tab, right, I'm seeing kind of just standard pieces of things. Are they, what's their vendor record? What's their vendor ID? What type of supplier are they going to be? Are they a primary? Are they going to be a sub-tier supplier? And we can go ahead and track that here as well. What commodities, what parts do they have the ability to go ahead and deliver to us? What process capabilities do they have? I can identify all that here on the actual vendor record in TIP. And then what's really nice, what I've seen a lot of people, more interested in is, in Costpoint, you get that compute vendor performance option where, the system can look at, each supplier at a certain times, a timestamp or a time zone. Zone's not the word I'm looking for, but, a time range. And at that point, we can say, okay, how do they deliver on time? Did they deliver late? Did they have rejections, et cetera? But I have additional detail here where I can come into the different current ratings and the rating history for each of these. And I can be more subjective. So as you see, I can actually have as many ratings as I want. In this bucket, I've actually done a monthly rating for that vendor where I can go through and identify, again, did they have did they have non-conformances? How did they perform their receiving inspections? And take these to actually generate detailed rating grades for them. So instead of them just getting that percentage that comes out of Costpoint, I can have a grade, then I can take these and actually send these directly to the vendors, send them a supplier letters from TIP that show what their grade is, what went into the impacting that grade as well. So you're going to have really more detailed, enhanced functionality when it comes to managing that quality of each of your vendors as well here. Now I know we're limited on time, so I'm actually going to go over to the shop floor experience as well. So if you think about, not just from a QA perspective, but we think about the MES pieces of this. So I'll come over into TIPSFE. So now, and it's all really within the same solution. You'll see up at the very top, I've got a workflow select option that I can be in either the QA or the SFE solution. But as the operator, I'm able to come in and I can see just hey, what work is assigned to me? We think about those queries again. What work's assigned to me? Again, I can save different queries as well if I needed to do that. But now I know that MO 257 is assigned to me. So as the operator, I can scan that, or I can see, what's in my queue for the day. And once I double click on that MO, it's going to bring me to, hey, what's going on with this particular work order? So when we look at this, you're establishing those operations of your work orders in Costpoint and the MO, right? So we know this one has these, 10, 20, 30, 40, 45, and 50 operations. But now in TIP, I'm able to develop more detailed manufacturing plans, similar to that receiving inspection plan that you just saw, that really gives more detail. Hey, collect this piece of data for me. Hey, measure this. Hey, do it this way, right? So I'm able to embed pictures, I can embed videos, all that type of stuff to the actual shop floor operators. And what I'm seeing in this one is actually a little legend, right? So we actually have a legend that's right over here if you needed to know what these colors mean. But these green operations are operations that have been complete, right? So I'm able to come through, understand what we've done. So if I wanted to come all the way back to Operation 20, right? I can come in and see what was assigned there. Hey, place this drone assembly into the housing and use the following hardware to go ahead and torque this. So I'm able to see those instructions that you see. I have pictures of the drawings here. I could make this bigger if I needed to. And then I'm able to now see what happens in those additional steps. So step 30 is complete as well. But step 30 is actually, or I should say Operation 30, is a place where we have an in-process inspection. All right, so I'm able to come in. If I go over to that in-process inspection tab here, it'll show me, okay, what happened, right? So I can come in, it's going to show the detail here. Again, I'm looking at that MO, I'm looking at that particular operation, And as I keep scrolling over, I can see, what work center this happened at, how many we inspected. There were 2. And then I can actually scroll all the way over and see, what employee did that did that inspection. So who it was started by, who it was completed by, and what was the status of that inspection, right? So all that detail will carry over here. And then in addition to that, I also have the ability to go in and see which parts based on this legend, or I should say which operations are currently being worked on. So that W means that we're waiting for that one that hasn't been started yet. And then this red one actually means that we found a non-conformance on that. So if I click back on Operation 40, as you can see, there was just a question, hey, was there any damage found on this? Yes or no? Again, I can highlight that detail, but I'm able to go ahead and generate my nonconformance right from here. And I'll see my nonconformance stick up here at the top, where I'm able to go, and we'll dive into that in a second here. But outside of that, you're gonna have the ability as well to go ahead and speak to asset usage. So if we think about, hey, what part did we use? What tool did we use? I have this asset usage subtask here where I can come in and identify, okay, this is the caliper that I use for that particular thing. Now, this is a full tool engaged management system, so I can have all those tools be there. I can understand what their calibration needs are. I can understand the last time that they have been calibrated. And then I can even run a history to see, hey, what MOs and what operations did I use this particular caliper on, in case it comes back to tell us that we were actually out of spec for that. So you'll be able to do any kind of recalls that are needed, but it's tracking that. And then again, it's going to make sure that that tool should be used here. We'll have the same control for the actual operators, right? So if I needed to have a certain welding experience or certification, or if I needed to have, certain permissions, I'm not going to be able to access those particular operations and sign off on those. So this is going to completely lock down and make sure that the right people are working on the right tasks. To just kind of wrap this up here, right? So we talked about that. This one currently does have a nonconformance. I'll click on that nonconformance tab, and I'll start to see all the different aspects of that nonconformance, right? What was wrong? And over here, I'm going to actually make this one big so I can see what that nonconformance is. I can go into just the identification of that. So I'm going to see, right, where people can hand type in information. This discrepancy happened. I see what work order is tied to. I can understand what inspection, or I should say what work center that this activity took place at. I can see the quantities as well. And then as we go through that process, right, I'll be able to actually get to the disposition of that. I can identify our different cost codes. I can identify our disposition codes, right? How are we going to disposition this? And these are going to be options that are available to each customer to go ahead and customize, right? If there's different things that you want, if there's different cost codes that you want to house here, we can do that. And the really nice thing about that is, if this is something that's a bad problem, we can go ahead and actually move this to a corrective action, or we can go ahead and wrap that, hey, we have to make sure that this problem stops happening. We can link those corrective actions to that non-conformance. What's the last thing I'll talk about here is, as we go through this manufacturing process, we continue to sign off on the different operations. We do all the work. The system will actually build out our traceability for us. So we'll have our as configured BOM, right, where we'll be able to see that. And the system actually will generate files and data for us into what we call an end item data package. So I've actually gone ahead and ran this one already. And as you see, it downloads, it creates a folder here where I can click in here and I can start to see lots of details, right, about this. So I can see, again, what that initial assembly instruction was. I can click on this zip file and get out of this, and I can see what the actual travel report was going to be for that, right? It went through these steps. I can see who signed off on those, who didn't. All the detail will be here so that you can now track, who did what operations, where it happened, was there damage, was there a non-conformance, how do we disposition that? It is all that end item data package that a lot of times people are putting together paper-based in binders. It actually creates that entire file here for you. So really, I know that was, pretty high level, and we went through that pretty quickly. But really what we focused on today was the pieces of the TIP solution that ties directly to that cost point functionality that Paul and Dave talked about. As I close, I wanted to just mention that if we're thinking about it from just a truly quality management standpoint, there are actually a bunch of other modules within TIP that give you an enhanced quality functionality. Things like APQP, you're going to have your FMEA, options here. You're going to have risk management, audit management, training management. There's lots of functionality within the TIP product, and I just didn't want that to be lost. We had a specific focus here, but lots of things are here. And then I'll actually try to leave a full 4 minutes for any questions that you have for myself or Paul or Dave. So thanks for attending, and I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Jonathan. Actually, one question might be for you is from Paul Moore about the reject reports. Is that available in the TIPQA, Jonathan?
That is, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see that question here, Paul. So yes, I don't have an example pulled up here in this next couple minutes, but I can send something over where you can run that history. One, you'll see all the rejection histories there as well. And then I think your question also was how engineering might upload the drawings into Costpoint. So TIP itself is going to be a document management system, or what I will call a repository. So that's one of the other modules that was there, document management. Within that, right, you're going to be able to house all types of documents that are needed. If we think about wanting to have those accessible in Costpoint as well, then we would use that content management integration function and go ahead and link those documents to the particular records in Costpoint.
Sounds good. Another one for you, Jonathan, from Susan about TIPQA and handling MRO capabilities. Any info on that?
Yeah, great question, Susan. So today there's actually going to be what we call a complaint handling module in TIP as well, which can help you house any of those particular returns that may come in from a customer. We have received a lot of requests around this detailed MRO functionality. I don't have an ETA on that functionality. We're working on our next release of TIP. I can get some details about what will be in that innately, but there's some pieces where we can go ahead and take those work orders as they're generated and actually go ahead and kick off, if there's going to be scheduled kind of functionality around repair or something that's unscheduled. There are ways to work it in TIP, but as far as a formal MRO module, I can follow up. I don't have an ETA on that piece.
Thanks. And then thanks, Jonathan. And then Tish, your question around the managed customer returns. It's basically a whole business process management with the RMA capability. It allows kind of receipt of the customer return through a special type of purchase order into your inventory. But then it supports linking if the repair is for external, you need to get a vendor to repair it. Then you can actually create a standard purchase order, but you link that purchase order to the RMA, so it's all kind of connected. So when you receive that back in, you'll know that it's been repaired. Same too if it's an internal one. When you link the manufacturing order for the internal repair or the eval, the system will know when that is completed as well. So I'll post the chat in the chat, and also in the presentation. There's a really good Deltek how-to on the whole new customer return process. I think you'll find that really useful. And then Paul's the last question, probably also ECN sections. Is there a capability in Costpoint for alerts for waiting for approvals? So in Costpoint, in the engineering change notice area, there is workflow built in, so to notify approvers that there's an engineering change waiting approval, but it also has capability to notify impacted groups as well as just approvers, so that you can notify, just really give the heads up to different groups of an incoming ECN. So happy to help if any more questions on that. But I also in the presentation in the intro slide, you'll also see Jonathan's, mine, and Dave's email addresses as well. So we'll wrap up now. Just want to give a huge thank you to Jonathan from Deltek and Dave from Lexell Blue for the presentation, and you'll see a follow-up email with the presentation and the recording from us as well. Thanks very much, and have a great day, and hope you get some lunch.